Hello, beautiful souls. It's Reverend Chris coming to you today with a lesson on what the Bible says about hate. And I am your favorite non-denominational ordained minister from Detroit, representing my hood and wearing my favorite long blonde wig. So today is Saturday, and I was lucky enough to go to a beautiful memorial slash funeral service for an old patient I had. I was blessed enough to be invited by her family to attend, and I received Holy Communion today, so I feel really good about that. And it's crazy that I had hate to talk about today already planned because today is kind of a positive day for me, but I feel like me teaching about that is positive, and hopefully I can impact someone to talk about changing our hate to love. So I'm using my Grandma Boo Boo's Bible today. It's a King James version, and it's a red letter edition, which means anything written in red, Jesus says. So I want to start off, anytime I think of that word hate, I really think of my mother, and her name is Sharon, and she told me many, many times as a child never to say you hate anyone, and hate is a very strong word. And I used to not like when she would say that as a child, but now I understand what she means, because it is a very strong word. To actually hate someone and wish them evil and have negative feelings that you're putting out into the universe and putting towards that person, it really destroys you, and it doesn't really impact that person. No matter how much you hate someone, it doesn't affect them unless you actually use the hate as a physical catalyst to do something physically to someone, which I would hope no one would do that's watching these. So it's really hurting yourself, and it's destroys you inside, I believe. I feel like hate and anger kind of go together, and anger is something that as a Christian you should try to curb as much as you can, learn how to control that anger, and to never hate anyone. For us to have evil in the world and for us to have hate in the world, we also have to have love, or none of this would exist. You're always going to be fighting a battle between good and evil, love and hate. One cannot exist without the other, which is actually pretty interesting. It's kind of ironic, but how would you know what love is if we didn't know what hate was? How would we know what hate was if we didn't know what real love is? So it's really interesting. Of course, Moses told us our 10 commandments, and the highest being to love God, and then the second being to love each other as you love yourself, to love your neighbor. And nowhere in those commandments does it say to hate anyone. So I just want to point that out. I found a really good quote from Martin Luther King Jr., one of my favorite ministers. And he said, "Let no man pull you down so low as to hate him." So he's saying no matter what someone does to you, don't allow yourself to feel the hate for that person, no matter how terrible it is. And I think it's somebody who's really in touch with their spiritual side that's able to have that discipline to do that. So I encourage everyone to, if there's someone you're hating right now, to think about what that really means and to turn that into either love or just, I would even prefer what I call indifference, and just let it go and not, feel that hatred, because it's only hurting you. That person isn't thinking about you right now. That person isn't worried if you hate them, probably, if they did something that terrible. So I have 4 verses today I'm going to read to you. The first being Leviticus 19:17. And these are the words of Moses. And they say, "Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor, and not suffer sin upon him." So basically Moses is saying, don't hate anyone, and if you do, you're sinning and you suffer. So it says so many things in that one verse, and I really love that. Of course, everything Moses told us came right from God, so remember that. And then we have Proverbs 10:12. For those of you that don't know, Proverbs is another word for kind of advice. So anytime you're reading a verse out of Proverbs, it's advice given to you. And it's usually always useful, even in these times. So Proverbs 10:12 says, "Hatred stirreth up strife, but love covers all sin." So hatred only causes more trouble, whereas if you choose to love, or choose to have love above hatred, then you're going to be forgiven, and God's going to go easier on you and bless you more. Anytime you're giving love, it gets paid back to you, is kind of what this says to me. So I think that's so beautiful. Then we come to Matthew 5:44, and this is something that Jesus said as a teaching. And just as a little side note, it's also the same teaching he gives to some other people later in Luke 6:27 and 28. So it's the same verse for the most part in both chapters. And it's really interesting how Jesus never said at any time to hate anyone or that he hated anyone, even though many people really hated him, which is unfortunate. So 5:44 Matthew says, "But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you, to those which spitefully use you and persecute you." So that was what he was really going through, actually. And he said, you know what, I'm going to walk in love for that person. They don't even know what they're doing by hating me. That's not helping them, and spreading hate doesn't help me, them, anyone. It does no good for anyone. So he knew that, and he would always just say not to hate anyone and to always try to love everyone, no matter where they were at or what they did. It takes a big person with a lot of maturity to do that, I know, in a lot of circumstances, because as humans we do ugly things. Lastly, I have 1 John 2:11, and this is the 1 John, this isn't one of the Gospels. 2:11 says, "But he hateth his brother in the darkness, and walketh in the darkness, and knoweth not whither he is going, because the darkness has blinded his eyes." So he's using this metaphor as when you are so hateful towards someone, you're blinded by it, and you can't see that person for who they really are. That when you're walking in the darkness in the woods, you can't see your way. Even though you think you know what you're doing and you think you know where you're going, you really can't see. So it's really beautiful how they compare the two. Basically, if you hate someone so much you're blinded, you can't see that person is just like you. We're all people, and you really can't see the real situation when you have hate that's that strong. So he's urging against that because you can't really see the whole picture. So I hope someone got something from this. I always appreciate anyone who watches these videos. Please click click like, share, subscribe, or donate $1 or more on patreon.com. I will put the link below. I hope everyone has a blessed week. Thank you so much for watching, as always.